January 1932, Adolf Hitler was taking Germany by storm. With only 2 months until the presidential elections, he was converting recently enfranchised voters to his Nazi party cause.
German women voted for him in stunningly large numbers. There's all this newsreel footage of Hitler on the street being mobbed by women like he was the Beatles or something.
And it's not just women who were transfixed by his performance.
Wir können uns meinetwegen töten, kapitulieren werden wir nicht.
But behind the scenes, the campaign was taking its toll.
Backstage, after one of his speeches, he's sitting, drenched in sweat. He's eating a bowl of soup. His hand is shaking uncontrollably. This is a man who has sweated out every ounce of energy in the last 2 hours.
For the Nazi Führer, it would all be worth it if he achieved his ultimate goal: absolute power. Hitler. Who was the man behind the monster?
There were just so many parts of this story that didn't add up.
Teenage loner turned national hero.
He was the Messiah for the German people.
How was he able to achieve it?
All of it was an act. All of it was a show.
This is the definitive guide to the most hated man in history. Adolf Hitler was the ultimate political phoenix. Between 1928 and 1934, he would confront election disaster and scandal in his private life, in his quest to become supreme dictator of Germany. By 1928, Germany's economy was getting back on its feet after World War I. But 39-year-old Adolf Hitler knew his party thrived on public discontent. And the upcoming federal elections would be a political litmus test for the Nazis. His propaganda team was sent into overdrive.
Hitler and his brain trust had high hopes going into the 1928 elections. They'd done an extraordinary amount of work.
May 1928. Despite their optimism, the election was a disaster for the fledgling Nazi Party.
A mere 2.8% of the German electorate cast their votes for the National Socialist Party, a total of just 12 seats in a 500-seat Reichstag. It's a shattering blow.
Hitler and his Nazis are increasingly being seen as an irrelevance by many people. Just a rabble of thugs from southern Germany who are a particularly nasty and unpleasant bunch of people. They're anti-Semitic. They prey on the worst parts of human nature.
The dismal results left the Nazis looking to their Führer for inspiration. At the Burgerbräu Keller beer hall in Munich, Hitler took to the podium.
He said, the struggle continues. We're going to go on fighting this fight. But now he says we're going to take the kid gloves off. Now they're really going to target the enemies of Germany and make those enemies of Germany pay for what they've done. What he really means, of course, is that the party is now going to go out and fight communism on the streets.
Hitler galvanized his followers and positioned himself as the indispensable head of the Nazi Party.
Hitler clearly sees himself as the leader who will save Germany. He will save Germany in body and soul.
But if Hitler's party was to gain ground, their luck needed to change. In October 1929, the Wall Street crash sent the US economy into freefall. Loans from American banks helped rebuild Germany's post-war economy. But now the country faced financial meltdown as the US demanded repayment.
Now that there's a crisis, now the Germans have lost faith in the economic system and the German government's ability to take care of them, suddenly Hitler is the man of the hour.
The important thing about the political strategy of the party is that it depends on people finding Hitler rather than the other way around, identifying Hitler and the National Socialist Party as the movement that will somehow solve their grievances.
As establishment politicians failed to get the crisis under control, Germans turned to the political extremes.
They see voting for Hitler as a protest vote. It's a protest against the wider economic world. It's a protest against big business.
If Hitler knows anything by now, it's that his party thrives in just these sort of unsettled times. Nazi membership begins to soar.
With his eye on Germany's next elections in 1930, Hitler unleashed his party's propaganda machine, led by former Nazi party rival Joseph Goebbels. They created a series of rallies, with Hitler as the star attraction. Thousands filled the streets to hear Hitler speak at a Nazi party rally in Nuremberg. He promoted nationalism, but carefully softened some of his extremist views.
He plays down the anti-Semitism because he's not confident that the majority of the German public is really that interested in anti-Semitism as a movement. But they're very interested in economic revival, they're very interested in the future of Germany as a great power.
He's what we would today call even a political celebrity, if you like. He would be invited on chat shows, he would be on TV all the time. He has this immense appeal across Germany. He has immense appeal to women, particularly, who like to mother him. And even very young women kind of look up to him as a father figure.
Hitler's promise to restore German greatness connected with the public. And the results of the 1930 election proved it.
6.5 million voters, 107 seats in the German Reichstag, to become the second largest party in the Reich. The September 1930 elections are the moment when he truly becomes a global figure, as well as an important German one.
Hitler was now living a life of privilege. He split his time between his alpine retreat in Bavaria and a lavish 9-room bachelor pad in Munich. A chauffeur-driven Mercedes and uniformed staff were at his disposal.
By 1930, Hitler has become a relatively wealthy man. Sales of Mein Kampf have tripled, so he's earning a lot of royalties. And to top it all, he's a tax dodger.
He lived this enormously expensive lifestyle in this very posh flat in Munich. His expenses were great, but the income he declared were nothing like it.
August 1931. As a wealthy statesman, Hitler's dream of becoming Germany's supreme leader was now within reach.
Hitler is, for the first time in his life, a respected politico. At the same time, his personal life seems to be careening out of control.
Hitler was a 42-year-old bachelor, so he portrayed himself as being married to Germany. But being single was more the result of his rocky past with much younger women.
Hitler's romantic relationships replicate the pattern that he saw in his own parents, the dominant man, the submissive woman.
The relationships he has with women are not that of a kind of boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife. They're almost more like father and daughter, or even father and dog. These people have just got to be utterly compliant to him.
But when one such relationship ends in tragedy, it threatens to destroy Hitler's plans to become Germany's savior. September 1931. Adolf Hitler's most important relationship is with a woman who lives in his Munich apartment and routinely appears with him in public. His 23-year-old niece, Gaily Raubal. Hitler used Gaily to promote his image as a wholesome family man. But speculation mounted over the exact nature of their relationship.
His niece Gaily is described as this wonderful, beautiful girl, and he's obviously attracted to her. He has her around all the time. Whether he was attracted to her sexually, we don't know.
Lovers or not, Hitler was the dominant figure in Gaily's life.
Hitler wants to control her life. He should be the only man in her life. And when he finds out that she has an affair with his chauffeur Maurice, he is devastated and upset. He is terribly jealous.
There's this chilling sentence that Gaily Raubal says to her friends. My uncle is a monster. Nobody understands what he demands of me.
Rumors began swirling in the press that Hitler was keeping Gaily a virtual prisoner in his apartment.
She is by now in love with a young man in Vienna. So she wants to go to Vienna, he won't let her.
On the 18th of September, neighbors overheard a fight between Hitler and his niece. Later that day, Hitler left Munich and headed for Nuremberg.
The next day she is found dead. It was his revolver. Did he shoot her? There are lots of witnesses who said he wasn't there that night. So we don't know whether he shot her, she shot herself, or a third party shot her. That is the great mystery to this day.
Whether suicide or murder, Gaily's death pushed Hitler towards a breakdown.
He misses her funeral and takes himself off to be on his own by a lake. There are rumours and certainly fears amongst those close to him that he's contemplating suicide, that this is a loss which he can't cope with.
And things soon went from bad to worse. The press unearthed another scandal involving a former lover. 5 years earlier, 16-year-old Mimi Reiter attempted suicide. There was also speculation about Hitler's association with a known homosexual, Ernst Röhm, head of the Nazis' SA paramilitary force.
There are some extraordinary headlines in the press that most political leaders could never recover from. Hitler's lover commits suicide. Nazi leaders are bachelors and homosexuals.
Hitler had to respond fast to safeguard his image.
Hitler falls back on some of the tools that he's most crafty with. He uses Heinrich Hoffmann to present photos of him as anything but the deviant that he's portrayed as.
In early 1932, Hitler's private photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann, published a book called The Hitler Nobody Knows.
He is seen in a family atmosphere where he is, you know, the nice parental type. Of course, all staged, totally staged.
Hoffmann's book became a bestseller, restoring Hitler's public image and his political career.
It's extraordinary that within a year Hitler has recovered from this scandal and there's simply no dirt on him at all.
But Hoffmann was responsible for more than just saving Hitler's future. During a visit to the photographer's studio in October 1929, Hitler met the woman who would become his lifelong partner, Eva Braun.
She's 17 years old. She's slim, she's blonde, she's rather glamorous, but she's very innocent, young, naive girl who's had kind of quite a strict, conventional upbringing.
She fits in very well in the way Hitler likes women. They always have to be very young, very childlike, a bit trivial and superficial, and he wants to mold them, really. In a way, she is the second Gailey. She is the reincarnation of his niece.
Just as he did with Gailey, Hitler showed the same controlling behavior towards Eva. Even though they were lovers, he learned not to get too close.
She falls madly in love with him, but he keeps her at a distance.
Eva didn't settle for being kept at arm's length for long. In the middle of the 1932 election, she took drastic action.
It's only just over a year after Geli Raubald's death that Eva Braun attempts suicide for the first time. She shoots herself in the neck. So there's a kind of question mark about what exactly is this? Is this a cry for help? Is it an attempt to manipulate Hitler? Or is it a genuine expression of kind of absolute despair? It's very interesting that all the women that Hitler's romantically engaged with appear to end up attempting or committing suicide.
Eva survived, but after Gailey's death, Hitler couldn't risk another scandal getting out. So he buried the incident. Adolf Hitler would allow nothing and no one to interfere with his plan to become absolute ruler of Germany. March 1932. With his public image restored and his private life under control, Adolf Hitler could focus on his ambition to become supreme ruler of Germany. There was now just one obstacle in his way. Hitler's rival was national hero and Germany's president, 84-year-old Paul von Hindenburg.
It's hard to imagine two men more different. Hitler, the former army private, Hindenburg, the famous field marshal.
Hindenburg represented Germany's old guard, while this working-class Austrian was every inch the modern political pioneer. During the 1932 presidential election, Hitler took his campaign to new heights.
Now, this is an incredibly new idea, to use a plane to get around Germany in the 1930s. It's revolutionary.
Like Mussolini, Hitler believes in futuristic technologies, most importantly the airplane. It's used in the First World War, but then there's this big explosion of air travel in the interwar period, and Hitler sees the airplane as something that's very striking to the masses.
And Hitler obviously runs amok with airport officials, so the idea of flight plans, they're just for little people. When Hitler's flying, he just goes where he wants. So he'll drop into a city in the morning, fly off again, another city in the afternoon. It's a tremendously modern and sleek way of campaigning.
He delivers speech after speech after speech, sometimes 5, 6, 7 speeches a day. He seems to be everywhere.
This new style of campaigning turned the Nazi movement into a political juggernaut, attracting millions of supporters.
Ich habe Energie und die Zähigkeit gehabt, von den damaligen 1000 Mann vor 10 Jahren bis heute 14 Millionen zu machen. Und ich werde aus den 14 Millionen die 20 und die 30 Millionen machen. Unser deutsches Volk, unser Vaterland, die Bewegung, die beides einmal retten muss.
In less than a week, Hitler delivered 20 speeches at rallies all over Germany, reaching nearly 1 million people. Compared to Hindenburg, Hitler was a dynamic political force. And Joseph Goebbels' slick PR machine ensured brand Hitler created maximum impact.
He's a celebrity. People stand in line for hours to get him to sign an autograph, or to shake his hand, or merely to touch his shoulder. It's clear by now that there are millions of Germans, tens of millions perhaps, who would have no problem at all in seeing Hitler at the pinnacle of power in their country.
July 1932. The Nazis won 230 seats in the Reichstag election, making Hitler the leader of the largest party in parliament.
In a personal meeting with President Hindenburg, he is offered the post of Vice Chancellor. That is second in command, and Hitler has no desire whatsoever to do that. He will hold out for nothing less than total power.
He thinks his time has come. This is confirmation of the Messiah complex that's been in place now since, let's say, the mid-1920s, that his will has dictated that he should become Chancellor.
But there was one last hurdle. Hindenburg didn't want Hitler as Chancellor, telling him directly,
I cannot justify before God, my conscience and the fatherland transferring the authority of government to a single party that is biased against people who have different views from their own.
But Hitler was relentless in his pursuit of power. And 6 months later, Hindenburg bowed to the inevitable. 30th of January, 1933. Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler Chancellor of Germany, expecting him to tone down his extremist views.
Now, this is an exceptional miscalculation, and I think Hindenburg and many of those around him really failed to understand entirely the nature of popular politics. But this is not a question of controlling Hitler. If you give Hitler the chancellorship, the chances are you're the ones who are going to be controlled.
A month later, at Berlin's Sportpalast, Chancellor Hitler prepared to address the nation.
His first speech as Chancellor is the biggest moment of his life. It is his opportunity to set the tone, to make his mark, and to prove that he really is worthy of leading Germany.
This is not a typical speech of a politician. You have stormtroopers, you have Nazi flags. Already you get a sense that somebody brand new is on the scene.
After a decade of meticulously crafting his image, this was the moment Hitler had been destined for.
Typically, politicians always came in from the front. Hitler comes in from the back, which creates this enormous sense of excitement as he comes through the crowds.
Hitler prepared to give the performance of his life.
They're waiting for Hitler to speak. They're in anticipation. They've been high Hitlering. And what is he doing? He's pausing. And there's power in this silent pause. The power of that pause gives him status.
Germany's new leader was silent for almost a minute.
He says, I'm presenting myself to my people. I am the Messiah. And he waits, and he takes in the adoration. He starts out very slowly. It's like the beginning of a relationship.
Die zum Einsatz der Millionenbewegung nun erfüllten, sind Ihnen bekannt.
Now comes part two, after he's developed that rapport with the audience. And this is where he speeds up the cadence, he increases the tone, and he wants to send his message.
Die Ursachen klarlegen.
He's increasing the emotion, he's starting with the chopping, making his points.
So will ich und so wollen wir.
He starts the staccato bursts.
Bauen und arbeiten.
He talks very fervently, and he's sweating, and he's spitting.
Und so wie diese Bewegung.
Hitler had his audience spellbound.
Niemals an Hilfe, die außerhalb unserer eigenen Nation, unseres eigenen Volkes liegt. In uns selbst allein liegt die Zukunft des deutschen Volkes. Wenn wir selbst dieses deutsche Volk emporführen durch eigene Arbeit, durch eigenen Fleiß, eigene Entschlossenheit, eigenen Trotz, eigene Beharrlichkeit, dann werden wir wieder emporsteigen, genau wie die Väter einst auch Deutschland nicht geschenkt erhielten, sondern selbst sich schaffen mussten.
But Hitler's path to rule Germany unchallenged was still blocked by President Hindenburg and the persistent threat of the Communist Party. 27th of February, 1933. The Reichstag, the heart of German democracy, was set ablaze.
The Reichstag fire comes at a particular moment of real political tension between the new government, National Socialists, and the German left.
Hitler tells the reporters that he knows who set fire to the Reichstag. It was the communists. A well-prepared communist plot, he says, and calls for a ruthless settling of account with the Reds.
A Dutch communist was arrested, and Hitler used the crime to attack the entire movement.
Millions of Germans believe Hitler when he says that the communists are on the march and that they're forming up for some kind of assault on the German state.
Now Hitler had a pretext to get Hindenburg to sign an emergency decree. It granted Hitler the authority to restrict free speech and imprison enemies without trial. It marked the birth of the Third Reich.
The emergency decree is broadly approved of. What people don't, I think, understand is that the emergency decree is never going to leave the statute book.
This is a brilliantly calculated act of manipulation. In one stroke, Hitler is now free to wipe out all his political enemies.
By dawn the next morning, 4,000 members of the Communist Party have been arrested and are being shipped to the brand new concentration camps that even then are being built at Dachau and at other towns.
But even with opposition leaders imprisoned and the threat of the left removed, Hitler was still cautious not to overplay his hand. 21st of March, 1933. Celebrations of the newly elected Reichstag were held outside Potsdam Garrison Church.
Hitler now wants to portray to the German people and to the German government that he is no longer a threat. He's not a whacked-out right-wing nut. Stop right here. You see, this is Hindenburg. You'll notice that he's in full military uniform, and Hitler certainly doesn't want to let the people know that he is challenging Hindenburg's power. So he's deliberately dressing in civilian garb. And you'll notice Hitler is not even in sight here of Hindenburg. So basically, the psychology of this is he's backing off. So he, in essence, here is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
In public, Hitler was careful to maintain a trustworthy image. But behind the scenes, he was manipulating the media and ruthlessly settling scores.
Hitler smashes any opposition or potential opposition to his new dictatorship. The political parties are smashed. The unions are smashed. Until by the summer of 1933, Germany had truly become a Hitler dictatorship.
But one barrier to ultimate power still remained.
The problem for Hitler is that as long as von Hindenburg is alive and president, there's not much that he can do about it. He can't get rid of von Hindenburg, can't sack him, can't kill him.
With the communists out of the way, Hitler's radical anti-Semitic ideas outlined in Mein Kampf were now close to becoming reality. March 1933. With Adolf Hitler granted emergency powers, violence broke out against Jewish citizens and businesses across Germany.
There was a popular anti-Semitism at work in the party, and coming to power made them think they could now do what they'd wanted to do for a long time.
When international Jewish groups threatened to boycott German goods, Nazi hardliners urged Hitler to retaliate. Jews were removed from public office. Laws discriminating against them in most aspects of life were passed.
It's a statement, if you like, to Jews outside Germany that they must be careful how they treat the new German regime.
A regime whose guiding methods were intimidation and persecution.
Third Reich remains a society to a large extent built on terror. People soon realize that they need to keep quiet if they don't like what's going on.
But Hitler was aware his actions had generated intense feelings against him.
Hitler is obsessive about personal security. He has, dozens of security people at all times guarding his person because he's constantly in fear of assassination.
Hitler established his own personal security force, the Schutzstaffel, or SS.
Hitler's a very strange combination because on the one hand, he's this incredibly reclusive, introverted, paranoid guy obsessed with his own personal security. On the other hand, he has this craving for attention, this craving for adulation. And so this manifests itself also in his choice of vehicles.
He commissions these fantastically expensive vehicles that are bomb-proof, bulletproof, and yet the irony is they're convertibles. So it means that he can easily be shot as he's standing up in the back of the car.
By 1934, the biggest threat to Hitler wasn't an attack from a communist or Jew, but one from within his own party.
It must come very surprisingly to Hitler. It's centered around his great and good old friend Ernst Röhm, the head of the Stormtrooper SA organization. Röhm has become a rival for power within the Nazi Party and a source of agitation to Hitler's comfortable new rule.
February 1934. Röhm suggested an audacious plan to Hitler's Minister of Defense, Werner von Blomberg, to make the SA Stormtroopers Germany's supreme military force.
He was really looking to sweep away the German army, sweep away the German bureaucracy, judiciary, the Weimar Constitution, create a new, truly Nazi fascist state. Hitler wants none of this. Hitler says, these guys are going to ruin my prospects with the army. The army will just crush us. If we go in and say we're going to get rid of the German army and create a people's army based on the SA of Ernst Röhm, the German army will crack down and destroy us. So Hitler says, something's got to give here.
With Hitler realizing he needed the army to help secure his rule, he turned rumors of a coup, circulated by senior members of the Nazi Party, to his advantage.
Likewise, the Army High Command is horrified at the notion of Ernst Röhm and his thugs taking over responsibility for German national defense. An alliance is forming between the officers and Hitler, both of whom have the same end in mind, the taming of Ernst Röhm. Hitler decides to go violent, to solve all his problems in one bloody night of murder.
At Bad Visay in southern Germany, Röhm and the SA leadership gathered to meet Hitler. But the Führer arrived early, at dawn, flanked by SS officers.
Röhm and the SA leadership are totally unprepared for what happens. He breaks into Röhm's room, says, "Get up, you pig, you're under arrest," and then storms out.
Hitler arrested his old friend, but senior Nazi loyalists wanted him to go one step further and order his death.
He hesitates. It's clear that even now, he isn't sure he wishes to kill his best friend.
He counts loyalty as one of the most important elements in his political life. People who are loyal to him, he's loyal to them in return. And in the case of Röhm, I think it's a bond he finds very difficult to break.
1st of July, 1934. It was a pivotal moment for Hitler. He ordered the SS to leave a gun in Röhm's cell, along with newspapers branding him a traitor. He expected Röhm to seal his own fate and commit suicide.
They wait. Minutes pass, but there is no gunshot.
The SS took matters into their own hands. Röhm's death was part of an organized mass slaughter that became known as the Night of the Long Knives.
All over Germany, Nazi death squads target various individuals, opponents of the regime, those who have spoken out. Clearly, Hitler is using the Röhm crisis to settle old scores.
The official death toll was 85, but the real number is much higher.
The message that would have been sent out to anybody else who thought about challenging Hitler is that this is a dangerous thing to do. I'm going to end up dead if I do that.
Among those happiest with Röhm's murder are officers of the German army. They have demanded that Hitler do something about this problem, and he has. The SA has been reduced to parade functions. No more silly talk about the stormtroopers becoming Germany's national army. The army is confirmed as the sole bearer of arms in the nation. And in the ensuing weeks, every unit in the German army swears personal allegiance to Adolf Hitler.
In a speech to the Reichstag that was broadcast across Germany, Hitler justified his actions, claiming they were necessary for the country's security.
In dieser Stunde war ich verantwortlich für das Schicksal der deutschen Nation und damit des deutschen Volkes vor der Gerichter.
Hitler skillfully avoided recrimination. Political leaders, the public, and most importantly the army, all praised him for averting treason. 2 weeks later, 86-year-old President Hindenburg died of cancer. With his last obstacle to power gone, Hitler seized the moment, assuming the roles of both Chancellor and President.
Nobody opposed it. The Reichstag fully approved. And of course, for the people too, they'd come to regard Hitler over the previous 18 months as basically the leader of Germany.
Hitler's meteoric rise was the result of relentless drive, ruthless intimidation, and a cult of personality. But now he had to cement his position as Führer.
Hitler is clearly a leader, perhaps unlike any other at that moment, who sees the power of film and the power of this modern media as something that is really going to be important for establishing his power and continuing his power.
Hitler had so far used photography to help shape his public image. Now, with celebrated film director Leni Riefenstahl, he promoted a grander vision of himself and his plans for a strong, united, and independent Germany. The result was the ultimate propaganda film, Triumph of the Will.
What makes this opening piece of the Triumph of the Will very important is she has Hitler coming down in an airplane, and it's as though it's a Messiah coming from heaven to save the people.
You see the shadow of his aircraft crossing Germany. Again, the shadow of this godlike Führer figure. And then, as you proceed through this film, Hitler really shows you that there are no more divisions in Germany thanks to him. Workers, peasants, shopkeepers, professionals, they're all arrayed in their various groups saluting the Nazis.
What's interesting is also how much of that crowd is predominantly women and children. He is quite literally kind of represented as the father of the party.
It was a PR masterpiece. Hitler's carefully cultivated image, 15 years in the making, was delivered to Germans with the craft of a Hollywood blockbuster. Triumph of the Will documents the 1934 Nazi Party rally in Nuremberg, an event specifically contrived for the film. It was Adolf Hitler as he wanted the world to see him.
You can imagine the German public going into cinemas, sitting down and watching this, and if they didn't know much about Hitler before or about the Hitler movement, this would have an extraordinary impact.
Their reaction must have been to look at Hitler and the Nazis and recognise them as not only a force of the future, but also a force that could get things done, a force that could drive and pull Germany out of the chaos she was in.
The film was a celebration of both power and the German people.
I think the Triumph of the Will is perhaps the most extraordinary statement that comes out of a whole dictatorship.
Und ich weiß, so wie ihr in stolzer Ergebenheit diesem Deutschland Dienst tut, wird heute Deutschland in stolzer Freude seine Söhne in euch marschieren sehen.
He actually is the Messiah presenting paradise to the German people. And who wouldn't want to join the paradise after what they've been through? It's brilliant use of propaganda.
And a world away from Hitler's early years. From teenage loner and failed art student to Führer of the German nation, Hitler had stage-managed every aspect of his rise to power.
How far he has come from the homeless shelter, from the streets of Vienna, from selling his postcards on the street for pennies, to the very pinnacle of power. Think of walking through an American city of Philadelphia or New York or Detroit and seeing the homeless man on the street, and imagine him in the White House in 20 years.
Adolf Hitler had conquered Germany. Now he was ready to take on the world.